Our expert panelists joining us today are Dr. Richard Palmquist, integrative veterinarian and owner of Centinela Animal Hospital. He's an author, lecturer, and teacher. Dr. Christina Chambreau, internationally known homeopathic veterinarian, lecturer, and teacher. Joan Ranquet, animal communicator, teacher, author, lecturer, and owner of Communication with All Life University. And Brendan Golia, professional pet trainer, behavior expert, and owner of OC Canine Coaching. Welcome to Smart Pet Talk. I'm your host, Anna DeVere. In this special episode, we're excited to be joined by Hope Karen Gerecht. Hope brings more than 30 years of study, research, and experience in the art of interior design. Her world was open to the insightful art of Feng Shui, and she discovered this ancient approach to be the perfect balance for creating inner and outer harmony. Hope studied with numerous Tibetan Feng Shui masters and continues to use several approaches to create sacred surroundings that support the soul and vibrant life of all living inhabitants within. She's consulted worldwide, educated hundreds of students in the practice of Feng Shui. Hope is the author of Healing Design, Practical Feng Shui for Healthy and Gracious Living, which applies to all living beings, human and animal. Her teaching, writing, and consulting focuses on the spirit behind matter for optimum health of body, mind, and soul. And it continually sells out. We are so excited to learn more about how this affects our animal companions. Welcome, Hope.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today. You know, it's been said that you use ancient systems which reveal one's personalized energetic fingerprint to create design from the inside out in a co-creative manner. I am so intrigued by this, but can we just kind of start with a very basic explanation of Feng Shui for anybody not familiar with that modality? And then we'll get into how this can affect our animal companions.
Okay, great. Feng Shui literally means wind and water, and it talks about how we can't really see wind, but we can see the effects of wind, and we can see what makes the ebb and flow of water. And it's that invisible force behind those phenomenon that we're working with in the home, just the way an acupuncturist would in a body. We're looking at how can we keep things moving. If there are areas that seem stagnant, depressed, we can use adjustments to harmonize. And we're always looking for a healthy balance between active and passive, hot and cold, the whole yin and yang of life.
That's a beautiful explanation. I'd love to open it up to our panel who have questions about how this relates to animals. Joan in particular, yeah.
I would love to know how you might use the elements to enhance an animal's enrichment, I guess.
Great question. Animals across the board fall under the fire element. They're really active energy movers. But dogs in particular fall more under the earth element within the fire element. So for example, for a dog's bed, I'm probably not going to choose white, which just on a practical level would make no sense anyway. But on an energetic level, white is metal and would drain earth element, would have the potential to drain the energy of the dog. And the years that an animal is born, there are two very specific elements at play, one from heaven and one from earth. And so we can actually look at the energetic makeup of our animal. If you have the birth date of the animal, all four of my animals are rescues, so I don't have their birth dates. But when you have the birth date, you can actually narrow it down even more to their month and day and hour of birth, and they all have an elemental makeup. And you can see if an animal is really heavy on one element, maybe you want to bring in another element to make balance, because that's really the key underlying principle in Feng Shui is what is this person or pet heavy in? What do they need more of? How do we bring balance to them?
So how would you support somebody that's, say, grieving a lot?
Well, grief falls under the metal element, so I would not put a lot of white and silver around them because they're already deep in grief. but fire controls the metal element. So you could either put more candles or the color red or more of the triangular shape around them, and that will, on a soft undercurrent of energy, begin to bleed off some of that excess grief that they're in. And metal, which is grief, is called the mother of water. So that's the other way you could bring it in. They could spend more time at the ocean, take your dog to the beach. And the water helps to reduce some of the metal element. It's like the child saying, yes, mama, come to me.
So I want to bring in a cat. So what is the cat's main element?
Cats are, when I look at cats, the main thing that I'm looking at is how feminine and mysterious they are. They move a little slower unless they're ready to attack something. But across the board, I just think of cats more as yin energy. Dogs can be yin or yang, but cats pretty much are yin energy. And so what I'm looking at with a cat is there a spot that they like to sleep in or spend a lot of time in? And if you, it may be, but just because there's a comfortable bed there, but if you moved that bed, would they still go back to that spot? And that would tell me they are sourcing out some negative energy and absorbing it on behalf of the whole family. So dogs have a little bit more yang energy, and cats have a little more yin. I don't know the specific one element I would put cats under. I would more relate the element in a cat to the color of the cat. So a black cat's going to be more water, a white cat will be more metal, a tortie cat. Tortoiseshell cats are considered the biggest wealth attractors in Feng Shui because they've got so much going on, and they bring all these elements together, and like a good money bag of elements there.
Well, good, because my cat Queen Latifah now has a new job.
Money magnet.
Can I ask one question, Hope?
We're in the money corner.
Oh, go ahead,
That's
Brent.
appropriate.
Yeah, it sounded like, based on what you're saying, that cats and dogs balance each other, it being yin and yang.
Yeah,
That's kind of contrary to what a lot of people feel. How do you kind of reconcile that?
Well, we have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and one cat loves everyone. One dog loves everyone, but the other 2 are more standoffish. So there is a very specific personality that comes into play. And so I think we just don't expect the 2 that want more alone time. We don't expect them to pal around with the other 2 as much. And we just give them their space, just like you would people. And there might be more extroverted or introverted people, or certain people might get along and others won't. So we just make room for that.
And I think this is, I think, sorry, Brent. I think this is interesting because we get into this, there's a Western mind sort of breaks when you start talking about Chinese medicine. And for a long time, there's been a separation, but, as we sort of build the bridge across, we start talking about things in Western terms versus Chinese terms. And, Feng Shui, to me, has a lot to do with energy, and energy basically can rest, or it can flow, or it can explode. I mean, there's only 3 things that energy does, and it usually flows from one potential to another. So, when we talk about balance in Chinese medicine, that can sound kind of airy-fairy, and people are like,
Right.
what does that mean?
Right.
But if we actually contemplate this life that we live as sort of an expression of creativity and relationship, then it starts with love. And the question is really, what does love need to do what it needs to do to occupy that space? And when you look at Feng Shui, if you have a couch across the front door, the energy that has the necessity to flow from the outside to the inside, or from the inside to the outside, is obstructed. And so that would be in Chinese medicine called a stagnation, because the flow can't go where it needs to go. And if your consciousness needs to look out a window to work at your desk and be more creative, then that personality needs that. But another person might be distracted by the bees that are outside and actually need to face the other way.
Yeah.
So I think you do a really nice job of addressing it sort of in terms of balance and in terms of what that individual needs. And then just like for people, it doesn't matter what color things are if those things aren't right. So if you think your cat is this element in Chinese medicine, which is not saying your cat is dirt if it's an earth personality. An earth personality is a constitution that connects and brings things together and, is social. If we put 3 or 4 different kinds of beds out and we find out the cat likes one of them better, it doesn't matter if our evaluation was like, I thought it was a fire personality, but he likes a red bed. It's like, fine. And so people need to realize that this isn't a science like you can't put 2 positive terminals together and get an electrical flow. This is a applied philosophy as opposed to a medical technology. And it can have great effects if it's done within the spirit of what it's meant to do, which is to improve people's lives.
Well, I think what you said that I love the most, that I definitely wanted to touch on, is you initially said the word love. So that is the end goal for everything, flow and love and being present. And our pets bring so much love, and they give us the opportunity to express love. And the more we do that, the calmer we feel. There are scientific studies that show that. So I would say the ideal aspect of Feng Shui is, what do you need to stop, to be present, to breathe, to appreciate life, and primarily to love. And I just don't think much gives us more opportunity than the category of pets.
Yeah, so if we say, what does love need, then that's going to change over time as well. Because if love is creating a kitten, that kitten has different needs than a 23-year-old cat.
Right.
So we have to bear in mind that we're talking about really practical realities, and then these principles become almost idiotically simple. What sounds complex when you go like, you have to figure out the constitution of your patient and figure out whether they're more yin or yang, and so that the qi can flow. Those words really make some people's hair stand on end. I mean, I personally practice Chinese medicine. It took me 10 years before I could get anyone to effectively define qi. So, so I think it's really important for the audience to recognize these words mean something in Chinese medicine, but there are 3,000-year-old words that were used to describe things by people who were observing and going like, if you put a couch in front of the door, it makes the room look stupid. So the couch should be over there in a calmer place where you can sit down and relax.
One thing I would like to say, one of my favorite terms, you're absolutely right. The word qi is so far into our culture, even though it's been here since the 70s when acupuncture first got popular in our country. I just call it vital life energy. Everybody can connect to, hey, I feel more energized today. That's really all it is. It's is that flow of energy in your being.
And have you seen where people had animals and maybe there was some behavioral issues or something going on, and when you did Feng Shui that matched the people and made them feel more comfortable, that then things turned around for the animals?
One thing I can share that I just think is really charming is many times I've done 5,000 projects in my 35-year career. I've been in a lot of homes, and many times people have said, our dog doesn't really like people, our cat's going to go and hide. And they end up being attracted as I'm working with the chi force in their home and using the compass and dowsing rods or whatever I'm doing to, as I talk about energy, they'll often come out and come over to me, and the owners are often surprised. So I think that's really sweet. I have definitely seen some very specific things make the most difference. And I'd love to share a few of those.
Great.
One is when you have a pet bed up against a wall and on the other side is a toilet, especially if the side front to back, like a bowling alley, is going across the pet's bed. Not as problematic if the front to back toilet is going like this and the pet bed, but ideally no person or pet should be sleeping with their head up next to the toilet on the other side of the wall. Another very big thing is when there is a corner projecting into a room, and say there's a closet built in and that corner is cutting across a pet's bed or a person's bed. It is amazing when we soften that corner, you just feel the difference in the whole room. It's an odd visualization, but people can often connect with this. I think of this energy that moves through our home like a ballerina. It just wants to pirouette through. It doesn't want to get chopped into. It doesn't want to come in the door and go straight out of a window. So how do we keep more of this vital life energy in the home and don't have a lot of sharp edges cutting across your desk, your bed? Same with overhead beams. Ideally, they're not over a pet bed or a human bed. Sometimes they're unavoidable, but if you can avoid them, that's ideal.
I once lived in a house on a farm that had a spiral staircase, and my bed was right where the staircase went into the room.
Right.
And the person who I bought the place from had ovarian cancer. Like the energy went right across. So I actually moved into the guest room.
Yeah.
And
that's a double whammy. Feng Shui really dislikes spiral staircase, these big corkscrews going right through. I was in New York once and a company asked me to look at their set. They were having when you're selling on QVC or something like that. So they had this set and it had a big spiral staircase, and I said, you don't want, and it was just something moved in for decor. I'm like, I wouldn't use that. It's like some of the worst feng shui there is. And they didn't change anything, and they lasted less than 6 months. And I'm not saying that's why, but I mean, who knows? Who knows? Sometimes I think I used to go for 90% in life, and then I dropped it down to 80. I'm like, I just want every 80% to be great. And then I dropped it down a little bit more. And then at one point I was like, maybe we only need 51%. So I joke and I say, even if feng shui is 1% of the difference, it can tip it over.
Yeah, I have a question, Hope, about electronics and how those are everywhere in our homes and how that might tie into feng shui. Is there something that you could tell us about that?
There's so many things I could say about that. Time my brain is going through to say what would be the most important. So first of all, they are like 21st century feng shui remedies. They weren't around 3,000, 4,000 years ago when this developed. But anything that moves electricity through them is moving energy in that area. Now, do we want energy moving in that area is the question. So there might be, let's see what be, so there might be in this one system, I merged 4 different systems of feng shui. And in one system, we're looking at very deep math levels. It's what the compass was invented for before it went to maritime use. So we're looking at these rings and rings of information, and there may be an area where these 2 aspects meet that are like a rushing river of energy. So to add a lot of electronics in that area, it's already like you're trying to surf on top of a wave, and you just added a second wave, and you know what that looks like. So the best, simplest thing that I could say is that when you're using electronics, ideally your back is not to the door, to the entranceway. If you have no choice, then putting a mirror on the wall so that you can at least see behind you, that's taking care of your subconscious energy. But definitely taking care next to where you sleep, and not having a lot of that busyness, electronic energy buzzing through right next to your head. Sometimes, many times I should say, women hire me and then ask if their husbands can sit in on the consult. And I've kind of since learned to say only if they're open to this information. I don't want to spend my time debating with someone that this is a real thing. So before I realized that, I would get to a project and the doubting person might say, well, how do I know this is really X, Y, and Z? And to help them get comfortable with me being there, actually to have myself be more comfortable with being there, I would pull my electromagnetic meter out, EMF meter, and say, let's check and see if your brain is getting fried when you sleep at night. And they'd be, that got their attention, but really they liked that I was using some sort of gadget, and it was a practical physical thing, not this, woo-woo invisible energy stuff. So there are apps you can get really reasonably for checking the EMF field near where you sleep and sit. Microwaves are off the chart detrimental. I can be 3 rooms away and someone will be in the kitchen and turn the microwave on and my EMF meter goes off the chart. Ideally, we're in fields that are under 2 milligauss, ideally, and my meter goes up to 100 milligauss. It goes over the 100 and I'm 3 rooms away. So yeah, that's like probably one of the most important things I could say about electronics. They're great. They're modern day life, and it's just an aspect of how can we really let our bodies rest, and so then you check with the EMF meter, make sure that your bed is clear.
That's great. What about outdoors, especially for dogs, but cats as well? Some are tethered, some are walked on harnesses. Is there something we can do in the yard to make it Feng Shui better for the dogs and or cats?
Sure. So again, that same thing about the sharp edges. If you have a neighbor's home that's somewhat catty corner to your home, and that corner is hitting your home, you can plant something on your property that blocks the view of that corner. And it's also taking that karate chop off of your yard if your animals are spending time there. I consulted on a home in Bath, England, and they had a catty corner home with the corner pointing at their living room window. And I pointed out that, this is a bit of a problem. And we looked below that window and there was a crack in the wall where water had been seeping in. Nowhere else on that entire wall was there a crack in the wall except directly in line with that catty corner. So that is like one of the best things you can do in your yard for humans and pets, is just kind of softening anything that you're seeing that looks like a karate chop.
That's excellent.
I can say that I've had my home looked at from a feng shui perspective. And the most interesting thing to me is that by quadrant or by grouping of what the area means, depending on how much clutter is there or what you would call a stagnation, I'm shocked at how accurate that is as to how it manifests in my life. But I'm wondering if you could speak to that, how to design around animals with that in mind. You've talked about not having the bed by the toilet and the wall and that, but are there particular design elements that are just ideal for pets, where they eat, where they congregate?
Well, the subtitle of my book is Practical Feng Shui for Healthy and Gracious Living. So I really want people to not get too carried away with, I absolutely can't do this and I can do that. But generally speaking, you're talking about the Bagua, Bagua, and these 8 areas of life. The very center of a room or a home is called Heaven's Heart. And that's a charming place to consider a feeding station or a sleeping spot for a dog or cat, although cats will tend to go where they wish. And there are the same kind of category where you want a solid wall to your back. Our pets do as well. It helps them to be on guard and see the entranceway, to not be laying right in front of a door. It's better if their bed is up against a wall and they can see the entry to that room from wherever they're laying. That's a good sort of across the board tip.
Great.
But
So,
yeah, you're right. There are these 8 areas of life, and I do see unusual things. I'll tell you a very quick story. This woman she was in her 40s, early 40s. She said, "This is my last chance. I want to get pregnant. My husband and I have been trying." She brought in Feng Shui. So I go to the area on the Bagua that's related to children and creativity, and she had a little pillow hanging on the doorknob, and it was embroidered, and it said, "Go away."
Wow.
It was meant for like a joke if you wanted to sleep in, that you would put it on your bedroom door. But she had that in her children area. And I just have dozens of stories like that. You're like, how does this even come together?
Same.
So then if it's better to have the animals have their back to the wall when they're feeding, I would say
when they're sleeping.
Oh, just when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they're eating, they're just like totally focused on that food. I will say though about eating, I love elevating food and water just for that ease and grace for the dogs. We have a Pomeranian and a dog that looks like a Doberman, but he's actually 38% Chihuahua. I still don't understand that one. But for our Pomeranian, she just has this little 4-inch high little it's more like a plant stand, but it's her food station. And so doing that, it just feels like it gives the animals, a little more something at their own level.
Because so having the wall there isn't important for anything except for sleeping.
Yeah, if your dogs are really smart and they're working, then it would be good to have a solid wall to their back, but that's more for people. Yeah, it's more when they're sleeping that they just want that nice little cave cocoon kind of a thing. In Feng Shui, it's really, yeah.
How would you speak to color and light? And I know there's differences in how animals perceive color. And I found that interesting for some of my clients as well, whose dogs prefer colors they cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at least as far as we know, how would you introduce or manipulate colors and or lights to help pets? Maybe if they're anxious, maybe if they're high strung. And I speak to that because I work with almost exclusively behavioral issues with dogs. How would we maybe improve rest or calmness or a Zen experience for our pets?
Sure. Definitely the 2 most calming colors are greens and blues. More of the mid-range. When it gets too light, it's metal, and so it can feel like it forces you to focus too much. When it gets too dark in those shades, then it adds water element in, and it can kind of take slow a pet down. If you're trying to just help them be more calm, I think blues and greens in that wood element. It's what you look out any window and look at what you're mostly going to see. You're going to see mid-tone greens and mid-tone blues. And so we're replicating nature when we bring those into our pets' areas.
So but I think too, you have to consider the light, the actual spectrum of light, because even though we say that dogs are colorblind and they may or may not see a particular color, I do believe, and I don't know, I'll have to do a literature search on this now and see if somebody else has looked at it, but I believe that they have photoreceptors in their skin just like we do. They may not be as active as ours because they're more haired, but I will be surprised if they look at that and we don't find that there are color receptors. And those color receptors in the skin actually activate mitochondria. They're part of the whole circadian rhythm that tells the cell what time of day it is and what activity to do. So why wouldn't animals have those? So I agree with you. If they're animals and they live in that environment, the colors that they're going to be adapted to and be comfort colors are going to be earth tones, mid greens, blues. And really, really bright light's not so great for them, especially if they're predators, because that's not a good time to catch prey.
But but the color is going to hold an energy also. So
no, I'm not disagreeing about that. I'm just saying that I think the animals are going to be comfortable if the spectral tones are actually coordinated with the time of day. And for instance, one of my big bugs is overhead blue lights. that are in all these houses, spotlights on the ceiling and stuff. And I think those probably for everybody's benefit should be turned down around sunset and going to more reds and more fire colors after hours. We know that when that happens, circadian rhythm for people is better, sleep becomes better. If you have night lights on in a bedroom, at night, that may be beneficial for a few really old, cognitively challenged animals. But I think generally it's better if it's dark at night and light during the daytime, and having more natural light, because as that light comes through the window, that's telling the dog what time of day it is, or the cat what time of day it is. And that's congruent with what their cells should be doing at that time of day. And that's not necessarily feng shui, but I think part of feng shui is, what is the organism? What is the love that is that organism need and do? And so if we make the light at home more natural, I think that's far better. And I know if I go into a house that's all fluorescent lighting, I don't sleep as well. Even those little red alarm lights, like on the CO2 thing that tells you there's electricity running through those. If I go to a hotel room or something, those things I can actually feel them pulsing. I have to find them and identify that's this and that's this. Otherwise, I get a 911 call from my cells going, something's moving, something's moving, something's moving.
So Dr. P, I hate to cut this off where time is running short. Hope, this is a fantastic conversation that's got us all very excited, as you can tell. Do you have any final thoughts for us today?
I think that the final thing I'd like to say is that we really don't know the level to which our animals have, for lack of a better term, like a psychic understanding of life and us. And they're just constantly in the moment, and they're watching us, and they're staying tuned into our actions and I think possibly our thoughts as well. There are scientific studies where scientists have thought certain things and had great success at getting animals to move a certain way or come to them. So I think the more natural, and I even love this conversation about light being more natural, and as it gets darker in the evening, we have very low lighting in our home. So the more natural materials and more we can replicate nature, that was the sense I was looking for. The more we can replicate nature for our pets, the better, and for us as well.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for wrapping it up nicely. I really appreciate the panel. Thank you for an amazing show. Hope, how can our audience stay in touch with you?
I have a website, simplyevolve.us.
Perfect. Simplyevolve.us.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you'd like to be a part of our conversation at home, please email us your questions. And thank you again, Hope, for helping us raise our animal IQ.
You're very welcome. Thank you as well.
I've heard it said that our home is a living space, not just a storage space. I hope this conversation has inspired all of you to fill that space with love for ourselves and our animal companions. We hope you'll join us again soon. Until then, love your pets. Medical information obtained from our website or the live show is not intended to be a substitute for professional care. If your pet has or you suspect they might have an illness or other medical condition, you should consult a healthcare provider. The opinions expressed on this TV program are not necessarily those of Smart Pet Talk, this TV show, or their sponsors. For all questions or info on sponsorship, email us at info@smartpettalk.com or visit our website at smartpettalk.com.